Welcome to the Multisport Mindset Podcast, a podcast by age group athletes for age group athletes, focused on sharing stories, knowledge, and highlighting success in endurance. My name is Aubrey Hayes, and my co-host is Joshua Gordon. Welcome to our endurance journey. Welcome to the Multisport Mindset Podcast, where we deep dive into the world of endurance sports, training strategies, and the mindset that fuels peak performance. I am Aubrey Hayes, USAT Level 1 coach, age group athlete, and co-founder of Precise Multisport.
And I'm Joshua Gordon, coach and elite age group athlete, and also co-founder of Precise Multisport.
Today we're exploring, tracking, analyzing triathlon training. We all love the thrill of crossing the finish line, but what if the key to getting there stronger, faster, and smarter is hidden in the numbers? In this episode, we'll break down how data shapes better training decisions, from the devices and platforms we rely on to the metrics that truly matter. We'll talk about the fine line between being data informed versus data obsessed, the tools and tech that keep us dialed in, and how to analyze workouts without losing sight of the bigger picture. So, whether you're a data geek, a numbers skeptic, or someone in between, stick around. Let's get into it. Hey Josh, how's it going? How was this week of training?
Yeah, it's going great, man. It's a big week. I got one more week until my next triathlon race. And what about you?
Yeah, pretty good week. I had my Army Combat Fitness test earlier this week, kind of threw off my plan, but then jumped into training again, feeling a little better as I gear towards triathlon training versus being in a marathon block. So I'm excited to actually be back to multi-sport and not just pounding the ground with running all the time. So yeah, so far so good. The big thing that we're looking at today is to track and analyze our training. One of the big things we talked about is the mindset behind it. Like, what is it? So from your experience, why does it even matter? Like, why should we even track? Why not just go out and, oh, well, I ran this week or I biked? Why should we be tracking those things?
Yeah, for sure. I don't know who said it, but I think it's a common wisdom, I think, maybe to me and you, but it's like what gets measured gets managed, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, if it's, I think there's a time and a place for just going out and training with your buddies or going by feel. Maybe that's the off season or some, time between races. But like ultimately, what we want to do is monitor what we're doing and then see what we can change, adapt, and improve. And how you basically do that, it's just like monitoring your bank account, right? It's like you don't want to just go spend, spend, spend. You have to like review the transactions, see how much is
Right.
left at the end of the month, and then
Yeah.
you can work towards larger goals like we talked about last week.
Okay. Yeah. So definitely, I agree. I think when you start tracking too, people get into this mindset of it actually matters now. Like they're
Mm.
seeing things when they start tracking. Whereas if we go out and we're just doing it to do it, we start to see lack of motivation, lack of discipline, because it's why am I doing this? What is my goal? And it leans towards what the goals that we talked about last week. And so with that, I know that we probably didn't have that mindset when we first got into endurance sports. It was probably we ran the local 5Ks, 10Ks, just ran to run, maybe learned some stuff in high school during sports. So evolving over time, like how did that happen for you? Did it evolve or have you always been kind of like in the weeds with data analytics?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I maybe I'm not the typical person, or maybe I am the typical person, but like I come from like a numbers education. Like I'm a statistician by education, and I work in like a analytics type field in AI right now. So, I mean, in the beginning, I think I was super obsessed with all the numbers, and we can like talk about that, I guess, a little bit later in this discussion, where
Yeah.
like people, I mean, I have people I coach that are like so obsessed with like the minutia. And for me now, like I'm very I know what matters and it does not a lot. Like for me personally in my body and my journey, like there's some key numbers and we can talk about that. But if I'm coaching somebody else, there are more things that I would actually review for a different person, just from like a supervisory perspective. So I would say in
Yeah.
terms of evolution, like I have gotten more nuanced, and I would say more relaxed over time with all the incredible amount of data that's available right now. And what about you?
Yeah, definitely. I used to use, I think, the Nike Run app for a long time. And the one thing I was obsessed with on that was like it gave you an average pace for all your runs
Mm.
that you've ever reported on the app. So, the goal was get your average pace over your lifetime the fastest possible. And also had it like when Nike had it had like the little pod in the bottom of it as the
Oh,
GPS. You know what I'm talking
okay.
about? That like plug
Yeah.
in. That was about it. I didn't really know what I was looking at other than pace. But as I started getting more into triathlon, so I started looking more at it. There's so much out there. There's so much technology. And when I first started, I wanted it all, but I really never understood what I was looking at. It was like, yeah, well, my heart rate is it. Well, what does that mean? My
Right.
pace is that. What does that mean? Then so there are some things that definitely people need to focus a little more in on instead of all the data. We are not a supercomputer. We can't take all that massive data and make it into something. We need to look at the things that count. And so with that, I think there are definitely some times that like using data to track is better and worse. Obviously, when you're like in a big block, leading into a race, that is much better. But maybe in the off season, letting all that data sit in the background and just collect is probably better. As well as there's some days that I think like maybe your recovery weeks or recovery day, just set the data to the side. Don't even worry about it because what you're doing is stressing yourself out, which takes away from recovery because it is recovery mentally and recovery physically, right? So those are definitely some times that I feel that less tracking is much better. So, and that does lead into like being data informed versus data obsessed. And,
Mm.
how do you, I mean, you already mentioned this, so let's get into it. Like data informed versus data obsessed. What do you think about that?
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess we can say like to split it into two types of data in my mind. There's like active data and more passive data, right? And
Yeah.
so, like, I think the obsession comes actually with more of the passive data these days, like, meaning like wearable tech and, all these other things that you don't have to think about recording some event. It's just like you're acting in your normal daily life, and then it says, hey, you're overtrained or something like that. And you're just like, man, I didn't do anything the last week. Like, what are you talking about? And so
Yeah.
being able to like filter that information cognitively, like, and being like, don't let that affect your mood, don't let it affect your training, that's very difficult. It's easy to say, like, sit here and say, oh yeah, just throw those numbers out the window, like, don't listen to your Garmin or Strava or whatever. Oh, the arrow is pointing down, you know what I mean? And so I think
Yeah.
we have to be really careful. It's just like with anything in life nowadays, is like to have some sort of filter, some sort of cognitive restraint, and a mechanism for dealing with that passive data that's being thrown at us in this modern day and age. But in terms of like the active data as well, like that would be like recording GPS, time, power meters, core body sensors, like all of these things, right? And there is a limit to those, in my opinion, as well. Like there's like too much if you really threw on everything that you possibly had. And so I think, picking a few metrics for each block or for each training cycle for a race and focusing on those and trying to improve or change those is like the way to go in this modern, highly connected world that we live in. But
Right.
yeah, have you had any problems with like data obsession? I know you said the Run app, but I'm sure that was just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, that was the tip of the iceberg. I really got big into when I first started triathlon. I didn't really know what I was looking at, and so I saw all the zone, the 80/20. We talked about that a little bit last week, and I
Hmm.
got obsessed with heart rate. Like, oh my gosh, my heart rate is this, or my heart rate is that. And then I realized how fickle heart rate can be with like, what did you eat that day? What is the weather like? Like, did you sneeze wrong and hurt your back and now your heart rate's off? Like, it's so
Yeah.
crazy, man. And that's one of the things that I've stopped like fully freaking out about in pace, as gone through these marathon blocks, realizing every day is not going to be the same pace that you want it to be, like what your zones or your LT1 or LT2 may be set at. It's like, it could always change just based off of how you feel. So those they're parameters, if you will, and kind of, but there's a lot more things that you got to look at other than, I wouldn't say a lot more. There's other things you need to look at other than just the raw data, like you're talking about, how to actually decipher it and having the intelligence to say, okay, the data says this, this is how I feel, right? And kind of putting those together and going, maybe there's some skew in the data, or maybe, hey, man, I'm feeling really off today, but it's, so you have to be able to decipher that, and a lot of that comes from knowing who you are as an athlete and how you can operate and what you can handle. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm with it. Like the definitely being informed to understand what it means, but the obsession, yeah, that is slowly drifting away as I learn more about what the data means and how much I can really use it for. Like,
Mhm.
is it going to make me a professional athlete tomorrow? Probably not, but understanding it.
Yeah.
So with that, we start collecting data, but the biggest thing is how we're collecting that data, what devices we're using.
Hmm.
When it comes to devices, what do you use on a daily basis?
For sure. I mean, I've gone through a lot of different things. Like, if we just talk swim, bike, run, like I tried like the form goggles and all that kind of stuff, and I still use a watch in the pool because I am a triathlete. So, but
Yeah.
I don't really use heart rate. I just like use an old watch because it really messes with it. So it's like my old for one of my first Garmin's. And then for bike, I typically use just like a Garmin Edge, so like a standalone bike computer because the screen is bigger, it has maps, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then I mean, and then for run, just the sports watch Garmin. Like I have a lot of other things we can talk about, like that I also use, but like I mean, those are the key things I think that you would probably agree on. Like, you just need like a watch and a bike computer, and then that's like the fundamental. And then we could talk about some of the auxiliary things, I guess.
Yeah, those are definitely, that's all you need. And honestly, you don't really, in the pool, if you had the ability to track it with, like, sometimes I don't take my watch, I take a whiteboard,
Yeah.
like a dry erase board and a marker, and I'll write my workout down and I'll just jot down the times
Mm.
next to it because I feel like I get like way too attached to my watch in the pool sometimes.
Oh,
And
totally. Like having to
yeah,
like press it at the end, it totally
yeah,
messes with the last few strokes.
yeah.
Yeah, it's stupid. I don't like it.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then like if it messes up on a turn, like, oh, my times are off. I get that a lot from athletes too. Like, oh, there's an
Oh.
extra 50. Look, it's okay. It's gonna be all right. Like like
Yeah, yeah,
I see him
yeah, yeah.
post, yeah, one of them's, oh, he was on here. He'll post on Strava. He'll be like, oh yeah, watch did an extra 75, or like, oh, I actually did this, but the watch it, man, no, nobody cares, man. And I tell him that straight. Nobody cares, dude. It's just Strava.
Yeah.
Everybody's just trying to show who's bigger, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, those are definitely it. And I would say the only auxiliary things that I have used or will use are like heart rate monitor or like a heart rate strap because these things
Hmm.
don't work. And then when you have tattoos, they definitely don't work.
Mm.
And then obviously power meter on the bike, depending on what kind of power meter you use, but power meter on the bike. And then I used to run with power, but I found it getting too overwhelming for me to constantly look at that. I know you still run with power, but how
Yeah.
about you on the auxiliary devices?
I mean, same as you. I mean, I have stopped using like a chest heart rate strap. I don't like how it feels on me anymore. I have like a Coros band, but like we can talk about. I don't really use heart rate. I've actually turned off my heart rate monitor after my last Ironman, and I'll turn it
Yeah,
back on for races. I mean, it is a data thing maybe, but like I just don't care what it says. Like I know what my body is feeling, and I know I can hold a certain heart rate for like 9 or 10 hours. So for 5 hours, and like I don't if it's off or off. But I do have a core sensor as well that I've been using for the last few years. A lot of people are using that these days because I was like in Kona and all that other stuff, and I live in Texas, so it's super hot all the time, and that gives some interesting information, skin temperature and estimated core temperature, which it is pretty cool to get that information. I find it just as useful as heart rate, to be honest, because that's one of the more limiters for me personally. I mean, you did that Galveston race, remember? That was like
yeah,
it's coming up, and it's like not even that. It's April, and it's already like super hot, and so just kind of
yeah,
knowing where my body temperature is actually helps. Like me some. And then, I mean, yeah, I guess that's I have a bunch of other little things that like I've messed around with over the years. Like I had those form goggles. I had like a temperature sensor for my running shoe that like tells me certain things. I mean, all that stuff though is just kind of I mean, it's interesting for like a little while and then it's just kind of noise, you know. It's just only man, it's like when you are like going and it's like I need to like get 12,000 chargers. It's like I have to charge this with like proprietary charger and then this
Yeah.
and this not working and then oh my Strava pod like I do use running with power because it's good for me because I don't look at heart rate. But I got like flipped upside down in a race and it's like giving me values that are like twice as high and I'm just like what's going on? Am I like running on the moon right now? Like I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Then it's like negative. I'm just like, why is this number on my watch? I can't stop it from. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I got you. Yeah, it's yeah, that's tough. So, and that's the biggest thing with technology, as you mentioned, like you got to have like a daggone power strip dedicated to all your devices. Like,
Mm.
here's my watch, here's my heart rate monitor, here's my, especially for the bike, if you have Di2 or any kind of
Oh
electronic
yeah.
shifting, dude, screwed. Like every time before I go out on my bike, I have my pedals, because I have power pedals, they're plugged in, and I have the Di2 plugged in, and then, I've got my, because I don't have a fancy like rear light and stuff. I have my rear
Mm.
light and front light
Oh,
plugged
the
in.
radar. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh man, like every outlet in the house has some kind of bike, and then I have to map out where to grab it in the morning, like so
Yeah.
it's a lot, man. But the
Mm-hmm.
basic things that I definitely wear are gonna be like my computers, heart rate, and power. Those are the
Mm-hmm.
three main things that I think everybody should look at. Heart rate, tracking it in the background. I don't ever look at it while I'm in the workout.
Mm.
Always, it tracks in the background. I'll take a look at it here and there. And there's some other metrics when we talk about platforms and those metrics
I
that I'll
think.
talk about
Mm-hmm.
of why I use that in the background. But enough about devices. I think everybody's got the idea on the devices, what brand you wear, how you wear it. I don't have any input on that. I've used multiple brands. I think they all work. They just give you different data points. I think Garmin like overdoes it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I switched to the Wahoo. The Wahoo is extremely basic, but I think they're discontinuing their watch, so that kind of sucks. But with that, so as we talk about like Strava and Garmin and TrainingPeaks and all that, what's the
Mm-hmm.
main server that you use to look
Mm-hmm.
at, or main platform you use to look at your data?
Yeah. So I've been in Garmin forever. I mean, I guess that was like
S-
what I was first introduced to when I started triathlon. I think I
Yeah,
started with like Samsung or something, but it was terrible for any sort of like advanced training. Like it's good for like lifestyle kind of things.
yeah,
And
I've got
then
the Apple Watches too. It's
oh,
garbage.
I people I coach have the Apple Watch, and it's like these workouts that are coming into Training Peaks. I'm like, what is going on with this workout? Like
Yeah, it
it's
just
like
like
the
randomly
paces, yeah,
pauses. Yeah.
yeah, and then but yeah, I use Training Peaks for like coaching, and then my own plan is on Training Peaks as well. But to be honest, like I mostly monitor my training like on Strava. Like it's actually I don't find the Training Peaks like training log to be as good, like high level view for me personally, the way that I look at it, because I look at things more like I focus on just a few key metrics. And if you want to really dive deep, which I think some people prefer that kind of thing, like Training Peaks is good. But I've also messed around with some of the other kind of smaller options like intervals. I'm sure you've heard of that one. Intervals
Hmm.
ICU and then Golden Cheetah. But I'm also like a super nerd. Like I do my own analytics. Like I'll download the files and like open them up in Python and like parse them out. And like I have all these scripts that I wrote to like analyze it. So like if I'm gonna like get in the weeds, like I'll just do it myself. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If there's something I want to like look at. And I mean that's I'm kind of like all over the place, I guess you could say. What about you?
Yeah, I write everything and manage all my workouts and training peaks, but the Wahoo app for like their platforms isn't so great at like doing that.
Mm.
And if you don't record it in Wahoo, it won't load into it. So
Oh
I'm
no,
getting like
that's annoying.
partial, yeah. So it's basic. It was ch a cheap watch. I didn't want to spend $800 on another Garmin. So it's
Yeah.
doing what I need it to do. But yeah, everything's built in Training Peaks, and then I utilize Strava to just show off to my friends that I'm better than them. And then
Uh, yeah,
also I like looking at Strava based on like looking at the hours, total distance and
yeah,
stuff like that. I think it does a better job than Training Peaks does of separating out like the total mileage and stuff like that for the year. That's always fun.
yeah.
But Training Peaks definitely has the metrics that I look at when I'm trying to improve my own fitness, improve that endurance base, look at those metrics, make sure I don't get injured. So yeah, that's my
Mm-hmm.
main platform is Training Peaks for sure.
Very cool.
So with that, like obviously you dissect your stuff
Mm-hmm.
quite a bit when you like post workout. So like what are you looking at post workout?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the main things really like are like time. Like a lot of the workouts are time based or distance, right? Those are the
Yeah,
kind of key things that I look at. But then within those two domains, there's usually intervals or something like that, like how much time they're spending at certain intensities. And so I also look at like the intensity distribution in those domains of time and distance. So that could be in heart rate for somebody I'm coaching. For me, I don't look at heart rate, like I said, but that would kind of be like, what are the effort levels? Or if it's like really hot or something, I'm talking like true effort, not like the pace or the power. But if it's like a
yeah,
normal kind of situation, like I'll just like look at pace for run or power for run, and then of course like power on the bike. But honestly, I also look at speed on the bike. I know you're not like supposed to do that, but like I know like, oh, if I'm having really crap aerodynamic position, but I'm putting out a lot of power, it's like irrelevant, So
right.
people say no, people say, oh, don't talk about speed on the bike. It doesn't matter. That's the only thing that matters in the end, right?
Yeah.
Like so
Speed is the purpose of the bike.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, at times I do look at speed in certain conditions, but like I would say 80% of the time I'm just looking at time. And then some of the other key sessions, like I have some key sessions every week. And in those sessions I do kind of deeper dive. And I will go on Training Peaks and like look at my normalized power in those intervals or the kilojoules for the entire ride and those kind of things. Now, I think we've talked, you might want to talk about this a little bit, but TSS, I don't use TSS. Even the people that
Yeah.
I coach, like I don't do like annual planning. I don't look at the TSS of a specific workout. Okay, some workouts, like an Ironman bike, like if you're preparing for some specific thing, like you need 250 to 300 TSS. There's some workouts I'm like, oh, TSS matters because that's kind of what you need it for. But like
Yeah.
90% of the workouts, like it's irrelevant for me personally. So I really almost never look at TSS. What about you?
Yeah.
I know you had mentioned to me before we started recording that you like CTL and you like think those are useful. So why don't
Yeah.
why don't you tell me about that?
Yeah. So when post workout, first thing for me is obviously I'm looking at those. If I have interval sessions, are we hitting the mark? It's funny you mentioned the heart rate thing. So I look at that quite often with my athletes because I can kind of tell like maybe their FTP's off or maybe their threshold's off a little bit because or they're not pushing hard enough during those tests
Mm,
because they'll hit those intervals and they're supposed to be like like threshold VO2 intervals and the heart rate's at 145. Like I know you're not
mm,
Kipchoge, bro. Like so
yeah,
there's
yeah.
some like you're not pushing somewhere and it could be a mental aspect and so that's something I work on with them is like how to essentially tell the legs to shut up during those tests and like push through pain.
Mm,
And a lot of athletes gain so much more when they realize that they can push the body a little further, that it has a little more. And
mm,
so that's one of those things I look at. But overall, holistically, when we're looking at plans, and yes, you're right, I wanted to talk about this a little bit, is when we talk about our CTL and then our ATL and our TSB when it comes to training peaks. And when you look into training peaks, when you talk about CTL, you're talking about your chronic training load. And that is essentially going to be your fitness score, which is a 6 week total or 42-day total, right, of your TSS. And so that's what um, it's like your TSS and I believe it's your fatigue like calculated into what that fitness score is. And then when you look at your ATL, where your acute training load, which is a 7 day, which is going to be your fatigue when you look in training peaks, and then TSB, which is your form. And so when we look at those CTL, obviously you want CTL to be kind of linear. You want it to continually increase. Unless you're like an elite athlete or something, it shouldn't increase more than like 5 points per week. I think
Hmm.
people, when they first start, they look at it and expect it to be like start just growing and growing. But if you do that, you're going to start overreaching as a new athlete. And then when we look at fatigue, your fatigue should not be higher, depending, should not be higher than your CTL. So if you look at fatigue on there, say your CTL is a 70 and your fatigue's at a 90, it might be time to take a rest day or an active rest week to kind of pull that back down and get back to it because what you're doing is overstressing the body, creating more fatigue and possible injury or illness later on. And then looking at TSB, so this is your form. Like as you're training, you should maintain a form of like a -10 to -30 is where you're around. And then as we look to taper for a big race, so we'll start decreasing that TSS per week, then it should hit about +15 to +25 is supposed to be the the perfect zone for recovery and ready to race. And so with that, I do look at there's two things I look at when I'm building is TSS and hours. So the increase when I build plans is 10 to 15% in time or TSS. So I say that it could be like, hey, this week is 11 hours of training at 550 TSS, but next week is going to be 11 hours of training at 620 TSS. Because
Hmm.
now we've got a little more intensity. I'm not going to add time and TSS because what I'm going to do is injure you. So there's some
Hmm.
things that I look at those specifically because I know when I was like really deep into some blocks that helped me out, and it seems to be helping
Hmm.
some of my athletes as well. So those are the
For
big
sure.
things that I look at when we post workouts, post week, as I'm building everybody's workouts for the weeks. So,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of benefit to that. Like, I mean, I think I do the same thing, just not with the number. Like, I'll look at, hey, you know, TSS increase, it would, but it's like we're adding 5 minutes of intensity to each interval in this session, you know?
yeah,
And sure,
yeah,
if I look at the TSS, it went from 80 to 90. Like, yeah, it's there. And I mean, I recognize that, but I'm also thinking like, I'm thinking about what is the stimulus that this person needs to improve, right? And
mm,
when I think of that in myself or others, I'm not thinking, oh, they need this much TSS to improve. I'm thinking, hey, they need to be hold 280 watts. They did it for 5 sets of 8 minutes. Now they need to do it for 6 sets of 10 minutes, to get to the next level in their race, right? And that is an increase in TSS, right? But in my
yes,
mind, I'm thinking, hey, what is the outcome that we want? And I feel like TSS has a lot of problems. I don't really want to get too much into it, but one thing that we know from Training Peaks is for some reason they include swimming in TSS. And like if you swim, you're always swimming within like 5 or 10 seconds of your threshold. And it's like you just have like an hour swim and it's like, oh, 100 TSS. I mean, how many times does that like happen, right? Or you're
right.
doing like paddles and fins and it's like, oh, you're at like 1.3 intensity factor. You know what I mean? And it just like blows the number up. And you kind of have to like ignore swimming when you're looking at like TSS for the week, or it can just be totally messed up. And so I feel like there's a lot of work to deal with the issues in Training Peaks. So a lot of times, like I only if I am looking at TSS, it's only going to be like on the bike or something, or like I know that it's like the power meter's accurate. You
Mm,
can't really fake it like you can in swimming, you know?
yeah. Yeah, I usually go back and I agree, but I still use it because I usually go back on swims because I did notice that they're ridiculous on swims, and I usually adjust people's swims depending on what it
Mm-hmm.
is. So if it's an intense swim, I'll do one TSS per minute, so equivalent
Mm-hmm.
60 for an hour, or you can do half TSS per minute if it's like an easy 1 hour swim, and that's
Okay.
the way I can see manage it a little bit better for them. So
Okay.
yeah,
That's smart. Yeah. I mean, I think I
yes,
would recommend that people look at swimming in their Training Peaks a little bit more closely, like you just said, how to do it. Like
hmm
50 to, I guess it's like 50 basis points. It's like half a TSS to one TSS per minute, depending on the swim. And
yes.
yeah, I think that's right. Or I think a lot of you can do heart rate TSS now, like with the watches, they record heart rate in the pool, and that I found is actually kind of more accurate for swimming to an extent, right? Because you don't get these ridiculous numbers Like,
Yeah,
oh, go swim 5,000 yards, and it's like, oh, 125 TSS for like an hour and 15 minutes. And I'm just like, that's like the equivalent of like a 2.5 hour pretty hard ride. No, it's
yeah,
not. It's
no,
not.
definitely not.
So,
So, what are some other metrics that you look at? I know we talked a little bit. Do you have any
mhm.
other metrics that you specifically look at for your athletes?
I mean, feeling, like I do check in with people. I mean, I don't like mandatorily make people like comment on every workout or anything, but like at least twice a week I'll talk to people like, how are you feeling? How's that feeling? Because at the end of the day, for me, like, okay, are they handling it emotionally and physically, or I'm really soreness and those kind of
Right.
things. That whole like qualitative assessment coming from myself or the person is like super important. And that's one thing that some of the metrics try to capture, like those passive metrics we talked about.
Yeah.
But I don't think they do an amazing job. I mean, sometimes they do, like, oh, you're going to get sick if your HRV is messed up. Those kind of things are really awesome. But a lot of the times it's like false positives, we'd call it in statistics. So I do think the subjective assessment is quite important. And it's like often overlooked. Like, I think listening to yourself, that voice in your head that says, dang, I don't feel very good. My legs are sore is
Right. Yeah.
important. It's important. Like you can't like be like, oh screw it, I'm just gonna go full send even though I'm limping from that run yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, you can't ignore that. I agree. That's there's three things that I specifically look at when it comes to metrics, and I don't look at all three all the time. So it's important to say that the first thing, like you said, is feedback from the athlete. Like they can give me feedback. If I don't hear from them for a couple days, I'll reach out. Hey, how are you feeling? How's the body feeling? What's going? Because I definitely agree that you're going to get the most out of how people feel, like where they're at mentally, how their body feels. Is anything tight? Anything feel sore? Things like that. And then every couple of weeks, there's two things I look at. And it has to be you have to do these over like aerobic sustained efforts. But in Training Peaks, if you look at the efficiency factor or EF, when you go
Mm,
into the details, and then if you look at power or pace to heart rate,
mm,
and we'll kind of explain those. So when you look at efficiency factor, it looks at how you're improving your aerobic fitness. So what efficiency factor is the higher the number, so it could be like 2.5 this week, and then next, 3 weeks from now, it'll be like a 3.4. The higher that number means that you're putting out the same power or pace at a lower heart rate. And that's why I like to use heart rate because it's giving that background data and I can view that. I'm not asking them to, or even for myself, I'm not asking to look at heart rate every time, but every once in a while I'll pick those uh, sustained efforts. And I believe it has to be over 20 minutes to give you like a really good
mm,
synopsis of it, but that'll show improvement. So you want that number to start increasing over time, and that's going to show us where our aerobic fitness is getting better. Essentially, our efficiency. It could be like your running economy. It could be your endurance in general, things of that nature. And then when you look at power and pace, heart rate, that's where they call like it's like heart rate decoupling, or correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's aerobic decoupling as well
mm-hmm,
as another way they put that.
mm-hmm,
So essentially, you want to be below 5%, and the closer to zero, the better, essentially, with that. And what that is over sustained effort, it starts to look at where your heart rate starts to increase at that same effort. So if you can get through that hour without your heart rate, or that sustained effort without your heart rate raising quickly, like giving you that J graphic essentially, right? You are starting to show improvement in endurance. And then what we can do with that is if I start to see that you're getting really close to zero, I'm starting to understand, okay, maybe we need to do another threshold test. Maybe it's time to pick up the pace a little bit on some things and find where your new threshold is, find where we could push your body a little more, and which is all good things. And then the reason we want to do this through sustained effort, because if you do this through like interval training, you're going to see like negative numbers because you're going to have like the ups and downs
mm-hmm,
of your heart rate and pace, and it doesn't track it well. So, but if you start to see negatives over a long period of time, then we might need to reevaluate your pacing and threshold. Do you ever take a look at efficiency factor or the power to heart rate or decoupling?
yeah. I mean, of course, I look at those things in certain workouts for people, just like you said, like if it's an interval workout and you have all the hard stuff at the end, the coupling will be negative and it's not very helpful, right?
Yeah, right.
And then efficiency factor, it's kind of the same thing. It has to be like exactly like you said. It has to be like a sustained effort because it uses like I think it uses normalized power. So if you go
Yeah,
out and do some like crazy like 30-30s, it's like, oh yeah, my efficiency factor went from like 1.5 to 2.5. I'm so fit. It's like,
right,
no, that's
right.
just like an artifact of the thing. So that's one of the things you need like Training Peaks Premium, I think, is like to be able to like zoom in. Maybe it's only a premium thing, but you have to like be able to zoom in and slice and dice the workout to like look
Yeah,
at certain if you have like an hour aerobic you can like look at it because if you just look at the one number they give you in the app at the end it's going to be like not very telling, right?
yeah,
So I mean I look at all the things that are there like cadence, decoupling, which is like the first half and the second half comparison of a set of time, right? Like you said, and then intensity factor, which is like the normalized power to your FTP. I mean, there's like we could have a whole other talk on all the different metrics that you can track, I would
yeah,
say. But like, I mean, I do think some of those things are important, like to look at not just per workout. And that's what I think is maybe like kind of missing the forest for the trees for some people is like some metrics you want to like look at over seasons, over blocks, right? Like I like to look at my efficiency factor once in a while. Like I will compare a run, a similar run in a similar month, year over year over year. I'm like, okay, in a July 80-degree morning, what's my efficiency factor been? And I can say, hey, in 2021 to now, it's improved a ton, right? But I'm not so concerned like what's in January versus July in the same year because it's not going to be comparable just based on the humidity and things, right? So
right.
I think that's like some of these metrics like you have to split it and maybe we can put this on our website or something. What's something that you would want to look at like every single workout versus like what's something that we want to look at over a season or multiple seasons? And I think that's where all these numbers have value and purpose and these metrics, but yeah, it's just like which metric matters at what time. Like one thing which I've gotten really heart rate annoys me sometimes is like, oh, in the race week, right? It's like, oh, you're starting to taper down, your body's starting to repair itself, and your heart rate gets all jacked up. Have you had this happen? Where it's like, oh, I thought I was so fit, my heart rate's 145 and I can do 7 minutes per mile. Oh, it's like 160 at the same effort. The break
Yeah,
the week of the race, and I'm just like, what's going on, right? And it's like every metric has a time and a place, you know? And I think that's what makes this such a it's an interesting sport because there's so many I think it just takes years to know like, hey, this matters this time, this matters that time. And there's no way we could even sit here and talk for hours about what are all the little nuances, you know, that I've experienced over my like 6 years of doing this and look at other people's race results, mine or files, I mean, and so forth. And so that's
right.
why going back to the original thing you said, it's like I'm more of like withdrawn about it now. I'm just like, yeah, okay. Like, okay. It is what it is. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
that's interesting. But at the end of the day, only like one number matters: the time on the clock at the end of the race, right?
sure. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So,
So with that, man, like I know that this training sometimes can be it can be a mental battle.
mm,
So my question with you is that how, how do you balance? And I can answer this first too. Is how do we
hmm
balance our performance analysis with the joy of training?
mm,
And to me, I think hinted at a little bit in the beginning is like the process, man. Like knowing that the process is going to be up and down, knowing that it takes time, and just being dedicated to it. I think we were talking the other day, and you mentioned putting in 4 years of cycling to get your LT1 to what it is now. Because
hmm
I made a comment of like, man, yeah, maybe I'll be there in a year. And you said it took me 4 years. And like
yeah,
then and there, I'm like, oh my gosh, right? And so
mm,
like analyzing everything, looking at it all, and just going, oh my gosh, how am I ever going to get there? But you can't think like that. Like you have to enjoy it. Get with
mm,
groups, get with clubs, groups, getting text message groups with people that you know that enjoy the sports, that are there to support you, and just go out and enjoy the journey. And that's the best advice I can have for people with, don't get overwhelmed by analytics. It's there to help. It's not there um, to
hmm
hinder you. It's not there to bog you down so that you don't enjoy the training. How about
for
you, man?
sure. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And I mean, this goes back to, I think the idea of something like 80/20. I know that's like a training principle, but in
Hmm.
life, right? The Pareto principle, it can be applied to many things, right? And I think performance analysis, it fits into this also. Like 20% of the time, or even less for certain times of the season, the numbers matter. Your subjective, everything matters. You should record it. You should take it seriously. You have all these sensors that are millions of dollars of research have gone into these things. Use them, you know? But most
Yeah.
of the time, like, it doesn't matter. Like, you show up, we talked about this last time. You show up, you do the work as best as you can. Oh man, I was 5 seconds slower than I was supposed to be. I was like, I get text messages just like that. I'm sure you have too. Like, man, I couldn't hit the interval. I was at like 7:42 pace, and my watch said 7:47. I'm just like, like, yeah, it matters, right? So I think it's
Yeah.
just like we have to. The numbers do matter at the end of the day. Like I said, the race results or whatever your results that you want are, but like it's supposed to be fun. And if you get stuck in the like minutia of all the data, it becomes not fun. And I think that's the main thing that's happened to me over the years is like numbers are fun. And in the beginning, I was like all obsessed with every single number that I could get my hands on. And then now I'm just like, I look at a few numbers and I'm like, all right, those are the numbers that matter. Everything else, yeah, if I'm bored, if I have a little time on a Sunday afternoon, I'll dig into the numbers, but it's not like gonna make or break my week if the numbers are off, right?
No, for sure. And I would recommend to people, as you're getting into it, maybe take what we said today, like look at those couple numbers, look at them, but don't overwhelm yourself with it. Uh, it's a slippery slope. So take the basic things that you need, as we talked about, having that specific goal, and maybe focus on
Mm.
that. If your goal is the wattage, then that's what you focus on is what's my watts and how do I get them better, or pace, or if you're into heart rate, like how do I get a better heart rate at a certain pace? And that's what you focus on.
Mhm.
And the rest of the stuff is background data for when you need it. That would be my biggest recommendation to people that are struggling with it. So, with that, one last question or one
Mhm.
last thing, and then we'll talk about the future here. If you only had to track one thing, what would that one piece of data be?
One thing, only one thing. Uh, Time. Like that's all I could, because I could get. I mean, I could guess distance. I guess
Yeah,
I mostly track time anyway. So, what about you?
one thing, it would be power, because I can do power for running
Mm.
and cycling. Obviously, you can't do power for swimming, but I don't tell anybody, but I don't care as much about swimming. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean,
power for running and
yeah.
cycling, man, that's where it's at
Okay,
for me.
for
Yeah.
sure.
All
Nice.
right. So, where do you see the future of tracking analysis going? Because we see obviously the things we've talked about, heart rate, pace,
Yeah,
power, and then you see people testing lactate. Do you see like glycogen monitors, like all of this
yeah.
crazy stuff? Where do you see it going from here?
I think personally, I see it more where it's already kind of you can kind of go like this week. Garmin announced their like AI thing. I think all of it is going to ultimately go that way, like where it's like you just like record everything, and that things are going to try to tell you what's going on, like it's going to try
Mm,
to take your brain out of it, just like everything else in this modern world. Like they
yeah,
want to think for you, they want to tell you, dude, I have a rule. I don't let robots tell me like what to do, like
no,
in training or like AI training or stoplights. I mean, I kind of listen to stoplights, but like that's where I
yeah,
think it's going is like full automation because for the general person, like not advanced elite athletes or people trying to even do an Ironman, that's where all the money is, right? It's like, oh, yeah, there's some people, if we're talking about, you have to split it. If it's super advanced people, yeah, more crazy sensors, right? And super optimizing every little bit. But for the general person, I think it's like just some advanced AI that's going to say, take a piss and like have a carb and like,
yeah,
be a robot with your fitness. And then that's going to lead us to mindlessness. I don't think I like where it's going. What
Yeah,
about you?
you can already see. Yeah, I agree with you on that. You can already see it with like Garmin. Hey, these are the workouts you should do. And I think there's another like triathlon coaching program out there. They use an entire AI system that takes all your analytics and adjusts your training for you. Sounds great, but it doesn't ask you how you feel. It doesn't
Mm,
like it just like spits out a plan every week, which sounds cool until you get into it and you realize every month there's threshold tests and every month they're like it's just like it's an exhausting process. So
yeah.
yeah, it's already happening. I think it's just going to get more in depth as you spoke about, which I agree. I've seen iRobot and I'm not listening to robots. So
Yeah.
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 Well,
I
good stuff,
mean,
man. I enjoy this podcast. This is good. I hope everybody enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. If you're looking for coaching, we always take on new athletes. It's up to you. If you just want to reach out and ask questions, you can reach out to us. You can submit questions at precisemultisport@gmail.com or at precisemultisport.com/contact us. You can reach out, ask questions if you want them for the podcast or just in general. If you want to submit part of your plan and you just need some information on maybe how to adjust it or what to do, just let us know. Thank you guys all for joining us. Make sure you click the follow button, and we will see you next week as we have a special guest that we will reveal to you next week. Have a good one. Thanks.
see ya.
Thank you all for joining the Multisport Mindset Podcast. Click that follow button and join us every Wednesday for a new episode. Make sure to visit the team website at www.precisemultisport.com. Follow on Instagram and subscribe on YouTube. We will see you next week.